What up, YouTube fam? Welcome back to episode 2 of Recite the Light. Now, before I jump into this episode, I do want to do a shameless plug. WPPI 2023 next year in March in Vegas, I will be throwing a lighting workshop. So if you have any interest in attending that workshop, if you like my YouTube videos, if you've learned a lot from my YouTube videos and you want to hang out in person and learn about lighting in person, please consider coming to my workshop. You can go to AnthonyToglife.com to get all the information about the workshop and how to sign up, the cost, all of those things. I also will be starting my webinars next month, January 23. And you can also find the information about those free webinars on the website as well. So head over to AnthonyToglife.com, check it out, sign up for the mailing list if you want to stay up to date, register for a webinar, register for the workshop. I would greatly appreciate it. Now, with that out the way, we are episode 2, so let's jump right into it. Now, when it comes to creative lighting with this particular image, it's not that it's necessarily complex. This really isn't a complex lighting setup. But I picked this image because it was short lit, and we don't really see a lot of portraits that are short lit. It's not really a lighting style that seems to be used much. At least I don't see it much, but I think that it is a very interesting lighting setup. And it really actually isn't really a lighting setup. It really is just camera placement. But since I didn't really see it much, I was just intrigued and I wanted to bring this one to this series. So this particular image was done by a gentleman by the name of Justin Bettman. He photographs a lot of celebrities and he has a lot of very intricate portraits where there seems to be a lot of set design and that sort of thing. So I thought this image was interesting and I wanted to recreate it. So let's jump in. So if we look at this, first thing that we can see, obviously we can see all of these highlights. There's a lot of highlights. So that immediately lets us know that there's a light that's somewhere up here and it's coming down, and we can kind of see a little catch light in the eye right here. We can definitely see that there's light right here. Light is hitting here. We have kind of a pool of light right there. So we know that there is a light that is coming in from here. And when we look at these highlights way back here and on the top of the head, that lets us know that this light is, number one, it's likely a somewhat of a larger light source to be able to have illumination kind of covering the whole frontal of the face here. But because we are getting these highlights back here, that kind of lets me know that this light is high up and overhead a little bit. So in having a big source, you can have that light kind of placed here and it extends here and it extends down here. So we're getting all of that illumination there. Now, when we look at the transition from highlight to shadow, I would say that it is a fairly smooth transition, but obviously we have somewhat of a hot spot right here. So that definitely is a little hot. And the transition from this highlight to the shadow, it is smooth, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's extremely smooth. So that lets me know that the light source is big, but not crazy big. So if I had to guess, I would say maybe it was like, a 36 inch or something like that. I don't know. It could be bigger, and it could just be, since this is Daniel Radcliffe, since he's white, skin is lighter. So perhaps there's just more of a hot spot. So it's kind of hard to tell. But to me, it looks like it might have been somewhat of a large, but not crazy large source, since this transition here is not as smooth as it could be. So we can see that we have the light hitting the background as well. So that lets us know that Daniel and the background were relatively close together to be able to have that light hitting the background and illuminating the background like that. And we then also can see that this is obviously the shadow side of the face, which is what short lighting is. We've got the shadow side facing the camera, but we can see that there is a little bit of detail here, so it's not completely in shadow. I mean, we can make out everything in this area here. So that definitely would tell me that either there was bounce in the location from the key light or there was some sort of fill. Now, definitely I would say it was not an additional light. I do think that this was a one light setup. So I don't think that there was any light, but there could have been a fill card used of some sort. Whether it was a fill card or bounce, there's definitely some fill. Or actually another option is it could have been that the camera settings just allowed for some ambient light to be in the scene. So this could just be ambient exposure based off of the camera settings. That's kind of my breakdown of that. So now let's jump into my image and look at what we have. So when it came to doing this, there were a couple of things that are different in my image that kind of yield a different result. Number one, I was using a big source. I was using a 48-inch deep octa, simply because I already had it out. So I decided to use that. I could have used a 36-inch. I think that would have been kind of the more appropriate choice. But since I already had the 48-inch out, I used the 48-inch. The problem with that, however, was that I couldn't get it high enough to be able to have it as overhead as I feel like it needed to be. So you can see in my image, I still have, the hot spot here, but I don't have as much illumination on the top of the head. And the reason for that is because I wasn't able to get that light as overhead as I think the light was in the reference image. So you can definitely see that difference there. You can also see that in my particular image, the transition from the highlight to the shadow is definitely smoother. Even the hot spot is smoother. And the reason for that is because it was a large source and it likely was closer to me than it was to Daniel in the reference image. And so in having a light that's closer and having a light source that's larger, it obviously is softer. And I think we're seeing that. And you can also see in the catch light in my eye here, that catch light is pretty big. Whereas if we go back over here to the reference source, you can tell that that light was higher up than mine because the catch light in the eye is not nearly as big. So that's kind of a telltale sign there that shows that my light source was down a little bit more instead of being up here, which is fine. That's okay. So one thing that I didn't mention in this reference image is that basically this lighting, when I looked at the image, I immediately could tell that it basically was a Rembrandt type setup. And you can see that from having the triangle of light right there. So when it comes to short lighting, you really can have any lighting pattern that you want that has shadow, because short light and broad light, they really aren't lighting patterns. It really is just where is the camera placed. So in looking at this, I knew that it was just going to be a Rembrandt light setup, and then I was just going to shoot the shadow side of the face. So I had the light in a Rembrandt position, faced over this way, camera left, and then I had the camera down in this direction facing this way, so I was shooting the shadow side of the face. And then I just positioned myself similar to the reference photo. Now when it comes to the background, I knew I needed a background that had a little bit of texture to it, because the reference image definitely had that. And I really only have seamless paper. I need to get like some canvas or some other things that have texture, because I do like that in portraits. So what I did was I went to Joann Fabrics and I found some fabric that kind of had a little bit of texture. This backdrop is actually really green, but I just desaturated it a little bit to kind of match the editing of the reference photo. So I went to Joann's to find some fabric that had some texture, just to kind of add that to the background element. Now in hindsight, this one, it had a little bit more light type pattern into it than the reference photo. So in hindsight, I would have liked to have found some fabric that I think was a little bit darker so it matched that reference photo. But at the same time, in this series, I'm not necessarily trying to duplicate the photo exactly. It really is more so about recreating the light. So sometimes there can be some changes, but I do feel like this background, the background kind of steals a little bit of the attention because it is bright. So I would have preferred to not have that happen, but it is what it is. And so once I had the shot taken, then it really was just a matter of trying to look at how Justin post-processed the image, and then, you know, I just tried to match that. So there really was, you know, some blue greenish tones in the shadow. There was a little bit kind of like a yellowish orange-ish in the highlights. So I really tried to match that in my post-processing. And here are the two images side by side. So there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and you learned something. Just as a reminder, if you come across a portrait that you would like to be a part of the series, you can email it to me at AnthonyToglife@gmail.com, and I will try to incorporate it into the series. So I appreciate you watching this video. If you are not already subscribed and you don't want to miss future episodes, go ahead and subscribe, ring that notification bell. On your way out the door, go ahead and smash that like button for me. Help me out. As always, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching this video. And until the next one, take care. And go visit AnthonyToglife.com. Sign up for my workshop. Catch you on the next one. Peace.